Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Art Brunch Archives. Art Brunch Archives is a supercut of all the art-centered conversation from the previous week's show. Every week on Twitch, we bring in a new contemporary artist, gallerist, curator, to talk about their work, drink tasty bevs, and just hang out. I'm the host of Art Brunch, Rick Bowling. Shortly, we'll be joined by my co-pilot, Jake Leach. The most recent Art Brunch episodes are exclusively on Twitch for 2 weeks. But every week we're uploading an edited show to podcast and YouTube. YouTube will host the art part of the conversation so you can see which slides we're referring to. But if you want to hear all of the nonsense and hijinks of the show, definitely check out the podcast. Please take a moment right now to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. That really, really helps us out. And lastly, I gotta plug watching the show live with our awesome community on Twitch. It's really the way the show's intended to be. All of those links I mentioned and more are available in the description below. Our guest this week is Madeline Brice, and I'm going to let past Rick introduce you to her. Enjoy the show. Madeline Brice found us through our contact form on the travel agency, which is pretty cool, which makes me feel like I'm doing something well. Also, maybe she's just out of her mind. But we've created a really good relationship since then. So I feel really grateful and really fortunate. If anyone's interested in collaborating with us in the future, you can check out those links. So I put in. I just want to read her bio, and then we'll bring her into the stream. So Madeline currently lives and works in Kansas City out of her home studio and workshop space. She holds a BFA in painting and a BA in art history from Missouri State University. Her primary medium of choice has always been painting, but she has always preferred the term visual artist, as the process is non-binary and her work has always involved many mediums. She heavily focuses on the self-processing grief, dysphoria through sexual and reproductive trauma, and the healing, grotesque journey of returning to the self. Her work is explorative, experiential, and at times tangential. A place that I like to start that I think is a really fertile ground of understanding you, Madeline, is like I'm curious of how you think about your creativity as a child and where some of the creative impulses started or ways that you expressed your creativity when you were young.
Yeah, so I was, for as long as I can remember, I feel like this is how every artist starts there, talking about their childhood. But I was always like just drawing and coloring and wanting to like make anything and everything.
Hmm.
And I feel like that transfers well into my adult life because that's exactly how I approach everything still. Um, but in like elementary and middle school and high school, did every single art class that I possibly could. And I remember like my first experience with like exhibitions, if you will, in elementary and middle school. My teachers would always pick my art to hang in like
Mm.
the all school art show at the Springfield Art Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And just like going with my mom to see my work in a museum was like the coolest thing to me.
Yeah.
And then just to see everyone else's like my age and then all the way up through high school, all of their work, I was like, this is a really cool feeling. Like I want to tap into this. And just like all through high school, I took every single art class I could. I was just like, I always wanted to just be like making anything.
Yeah.
And then I also was very much a choir girl. So I was in choir all through high school.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started college as a vocal performance major, which is strange. But then I realized that that was not for me, and I swapped to a different art practice.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know. I feel like it's like typical artists to say that they've just always been making, but I've just always been drawn to it.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you bring up that I like to touch on often, or that often comes up, is that like you have an innate draw to that type of making, but then also for a lot of artists in their formative years, they had environments that responded positively to their creativity. And that's something that I see really consistently across all of the artists that we've talked to here, is that like you had this opportunity to show your work in this place that was like reflecting your value, or like reflecting the value of this experience that you're having. And it seems like that also kind of went into or came from family and other parts of your environment as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. My mom always supported my any artistic endeavor that I went on, and even now to this day, if you go to my parents' house, she
Mm.
has she has my artwork hanging up all the like from elementary all the way up through high school and even now. So it's kind of like a shrine of my work through the years. And I'm always just like, Mom, like just take that down. Like you don't need this floral alphabet I made in high school hanging in this room. Like
Yeah.
I can make you something cooler now.
Uh-huh.
But she's like, no, but you made that, and it's here to stay probably until I die. So I don't know.
Yeah.
She's always been a big supporter, and most everyone in my family has been a huge supporter of my work. Financially, maybe not so much, but
Mm.
they still think that it's amazing that this is like an outlet for anything that I want, you know.
Yeah. And what was the so coming from the mid-sized city that St. Louis is, I think about Springfield, Missouri, and think of it as kind of like a smaller town energy. And I'm curious, like, if you had a community of and I could be totally off base here, but I'm just curious about your community of fellow artists and kind of like the general perspective of art making in your community.
Springfield actually has a really phenomenal um, arts community.
Hmm.
Um, there, I there are a lot of people there who are trying to progress the arts in any way that they can. There's the Springfield Arts Council, who I worked closely with for a while, and I really just think that there's a ton of great artists in Springfield. I think that without like my community of artist friends in Springfield, I wouldn't still be making.
Yeah.
I think that especially like in college at Missouri State University, that's probably where like I made the most artist friends, of course.
Hmm.
And just developing like a studio practice with these other students was like an experience I wouldn't change for the world. Like sitting in these tiny little studio spaces in it's called Brick City at Missouri State in
Mm.
downtown Springfield, and till like 3 a.m. with these other artists who are just trying to like crank out these paintings or sculptures or what have you, just because they have a deadline tomorrow. And that feeling is just like an incredible feeling to me. I miss it so much. Like I wish that you could. I remember thinking like once I graduated, I was like, how am I going to get this sense of community outside of school? And
Yeah.
it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, I missed it often. Like moving to Kansas City, I feel like was a great move for me, but I do miss the sense of community that I had in my 27 years that I spent in Springfield.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I'll say just as someone who's like grew up in St. Louis and then moved to Chicago, like I very much, and actually being in St. Louis as we speak, I've been
Mm-hmm.
reflecting since I've been in town, just kind of like every time I come back to town, like, man, there's a certain like camaraderie that which happened to be just because you certainly had a positive experience, and I definitely had one here, and it kind of doesn't matter where that is, but also at the same time, it 100% does. It's like that very much 0 100% thing, and um, I guess like do you feel that like are you excited for like what could be next and like a new version of that, or is there a kind of a inevitable loss that comes with not being in school anymore, but also honors it in a way? It's like because it was so special, it can never be done that way again. You know what I mean?
Uh, I I do think that I'm excited for what comes next. I mean, I've been out of school for a while now, but I have only been in Kansas City for a little over a year, and but I do feel like, especially with social media being so present, that like I haven't lost that sense of community from
Mm.
Springfield. I still feel like I'm very much in contact with everyone who was like my base there,
Sure.
and because we have social media and Instagram to critique each other if we want to respond to the work, I think that it doesn't feel that I've lost anything moving here.
Hmm.
And it only feels like I'm expanding, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
And
there's
I
a
think that, well, I think that social media is also great for, because you guys might feel the same way, but like you probably miss critiques. Like I think that that was so beneficial to growth in process, practice, what have you,
mm,
and you just don't get that same feeling outside of school. So that is one thing that I do miss, but I think that social media can provide some sense of that. I mean, granted, your followers typically are following you because they enjoy your work, and they're not probably going to like type up like, this is shit, like try something different. Like they're
Yeah.
probably going to respond positively to your work, but to some extent you can ask for some sort of feedback that's more than just like, wow, awesome, you know. And I think that's cool.
That culture should start of just the pure criticism follow.
Yeah.
Just like
yeah.
every time someone posts something, you just type a whole paragraph on every single work. You're like, I'm not saying I like your work. I'm not saying I hate it, but I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel about it.
I'm
I'm down to start that with you. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's do it.
I'd be really terrified if if the critiques that I had in art school were some way recorded and shared and stored on the internet forever, because I
Public,
said some
yeah.
really terrible shit
Wow.
to some really terrible artists. Um, and and uh, and yeah, I think that that is a formative way of like, getting having like the hard conversations. And I find that that piece in particular is some of the most difficult to create later in your artistic practice. Like school is like kind of the last time that that's going to come to you. And then moving forward, like if you have somebody over to your studio from the gallery or something, most of the time, like if they don't like your work, they'll just go through the motions and like just never call you back or something like that. But there are ways to facilitate like highly critical studio visits as as a professional artist. But they're some of the
Hmm.
most difficult to create.
Yeah, I totally agree. And something that I've been doing, of course, not recently, but when I travel, again, thanks to social media, you can reach out to artists you know that live in the area that you're
Mm.
traveling to. And I have been known to reach out to any artists who I've admired, followed, what have you, and message them and be like, hey, I'm going to be in your city for like 5 hours on this day. Can I
Mm.
come visit you and see your work? And uh, of course, I get some no's, but I have gotten some yeses, which I think is cool. And then you're building your community even more.
Yeah. And on
100%.
on that topic, this isn't something that I shared with you, Jake, but I was doing some research into you a little bit, and another artist that you met at some point was also named Madeline Brice, and also lives in Kansas City. What was the deal with that?
Yeah, so she's actually not an artist. She works for the government,
Oh,
but
okay.
um, yeah, though it was the weirdest thing. So there was it was years ago, and my last partner, he lost his phone or something one night, and he on Google Hangouts he tried to message me, and it ended up being this other Madeline Brice that exists in the world. And she messaged him back and was like, I don't think that you have the right person. My name is also Madeline Brice, and I think that my like ex never ended up messaging her back, but this got her thinking, and she ended up finding me on Instagram and started following me. And she actually lived in Northwest Arkansas at the time, and I was still
Okay.
living in Springfield. But then I guess she got a job here for the government and moved to Kansas City. And I was like, one day I was like, hey, I'm gonna be in Kansas City. Would you like want to go to the Nelson for a date? And we ended up hanging out. And before long, I moved up here, and then we became friends. And now I have a good friend named Madeline Brice also, and it's very weird.
It is not something I have even remotely experienced. And if I met another Jake Leach, and I think I don't, I've known like a Jake Lee.
Mhm.
There was one of those in my high school, and we would have our occasional moments in the hallway. I'd be like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Hey," and we're always next to each other, at assemblies or whatever, like SATs or whatever. But never like true friendship outside of life. Like that's pretty. And then verbatim your name. Is it all spelled the same way too?
Spelled exactly the same. We went through a minute where we thought we were related, and
Oh,
just like didn't know of each other, just because like our name is not like super common.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but we really didn't do that much research. We kind of asked our family and like asked around, but nobody was like, no, we don't know anybody up there, or I don't think that we're related. So I don't really know the story, but I think it's cool that I know her and she's a super cool person. So
Yeah.
It's ongoing. The story continues for
It's
sure.
like a glitch in the matrix a little bit for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah.
I love talking to artists about little experiences that they have like that because it seems like we all kind of like collect these strange ways of interacting with the world that give us this kind of like sense of meaning or purpose from time to time that feels to me like good research practice for your creativity, like whether you sought out that information, but just when things start happening like that in somebody's life, I think it's usually like a good sign that you're responding to stimulus in that way.
hmm And I feel like I'm pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Like I'm like we were talking about earlier, Jake, like I'm pretty go with the flow. Like if if somebody or something comes into my life, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna lean into that and see what that's about and see how it affects my life or in any way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's bad, but sometimes it's
Yeah.
good.
Well, I think like not a lot of artists are overt, that a lot of artists are still extremely cautious because I think, I've certainly experienced, I feel like I'm a very social person, but like as an artist, I think I tend to kind of hold my cards close and kind of, once it feels ready, I will share it with the world and tell everyone from the rooftops. But like, if it's still like in process, it's something that I, kind of, it's almost just like I don't want anyone to like not get it, which I think then trips me up to be like, I haven't even fully seen this thought through
Mm.
before I shared it with someone. So so being someone like that, going with the flow, like, and to speak to the, you know, like, so the Madeline Brice thing, is like, she's not necessarily an artist, but it can influence your art in some way. Um, has there been any necessarily negative experiences that you feel like you could talk about, maybe not mentioning names if you don't feel like it, but you feel like you've maybe learned from being so open to influence in your life as a creative?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like my work is strongly and feel influenced by my relationships, specifically like romantic relationships. Um, and I've had toxic relationships in the past, as most individuals have. And I feel like I am generally like a trusting person. I want to see the good in most people, and so that can put me in some bad situations at times. And in the past, it has been romantically, and I feel that that has influenced my work positively because it's it's only it's only like what's the, it's only experiences. So like I look at it, I'm now able to like look back on those relationships and be like, okay, that was garbage, but like how can I take it and like run with it? And how can I use what that like terrible feeling was and express it in the way that needs to be expressed?
Mm.
And that
Absolutely.
I feel like for me it like keeps me sane a little bit um, because you probably feel the same way, but like your practice is therapy, and so I'm able to take those like negative experiences and positive experiences and just like get them out so they're not just like stuck up here whirling about.
For sure. I think we can go ahead and coin this the first law of Shrek and art, which is always better out than in. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I think if you're not allowing negative experiences to influence your space too, I think at some point, like, if anything, maybe not using half of your worldly life to have it, influence your work. And but I also just think that like shows like a lot of, I just think being an artist, you have to like get out of your comfort zone at all times, and especially if expressing like negative things. Ironically, though, is such a safe thing, I think, in a lot of ways, because everyone experiences negative experiences that are inevitably going to influence any part of your life,
Mm-hmm.
especially art. So, but I also will say too is like your ability to vocalize it too, I think, is a whole other level too. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty remarkable, I think.
Yeah. And Madeline, you mentioned that this is something that you're focusing on right now is being engaged in the conversation about your work and wanting to share more deeply what your work is about, because I think it can be read a few different ways. So I guess I'm curious, as we shift into beginning to look at some of your work, some of the things that you want to share about it before we start looking.
Yeah, so I was telling you a little bit before the show that like I think that my work can be processed by by viewers in a number of different ways, which
Hmm.
you just said as well. And I think that at least like a lot of the feedback I've gotten, it can align somewhat with like what I'm conceptualizing, but I think sometimes that when I actually do dive into the concept behind my work, at least my most recent work, people are surprised, taken aback by it, because it's it's like funky in a way, but I don't think people realize that it is maybe as sad as it can be. So mainly my work, people would be surprised to know that my work mainly focuses on like reproductive and like sexual trauma and the like body dysphoria that takes place after trauma, like bodily trauma.
Mm.
And so my work mainly focuses on um, returning to the self after traumatic events, specifically in my case, like reproductive trauma and sexual trauma, and the sort of like mental illness, for lack of a better word, that it can cause.
Mm.
I sort of have been trying to visually represent the way in which my mind has felt over the last 2 to 3 years. So the distortion that you see in my work is my own way, literally, of trying to visually represent how I feel.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
sharing.
yeah.
And we can move over to some of the work earlier when you said the word garbage, and I almost just pulled this shot up of just like this visceral experience of the way that you said that just reminded me about this work here.
hmm Yeah, so I actually did this like very small series of hanging my paintings on dumpsters around the city, and I loved it so much because I don't know, as artists, you probably can relate that sometimes, probably more times than not, you feel that your work is just garbage. Like when you look at it, you're like, why did I make this? And I don't know, I feel like I relate to a dumpster sometimes. And
We all do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
um, yeah. And so I really had this like strong urge to just take these paintings I was working on and like move about the city and take videos and photos of them like interacting with these dumpsters that I thought were like visually appealing.
Mm.
Um, so that's kind of where this stemmed from. And it also came from after a conversation that I had. I was on a date with a guy, and he at the time had some like oversight in choosing artists for this gallery in town.
Oh.
And we were talking about my work, and I don't think that I don't think that he meant it in a negative way, but he was just like, I don't know, like I think that there would be an issue with the nudity in your work.
Mm.
And I've encountered this sentence like too many times. I hate that sentence because I just don't think it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, fuck it. I'm gonna make my own gallery, and it's gonna be these dumpsters. And here they are.
Well, I
So
want to
that's
say
kind of how
just
I came to that.
totally. I personally appreciate about it is I've personally been very interested in kind of like civic utility, like things that just exist in an everyday basis, like a dumpster, for instance, that like actually has form and has like really interesting lines and things that once accented with something of your own on it, I think can not only like it becomes a kind of a symbiotic relationship of like I'm very much noticing the dumpster, but I'm also it's influencing the art, and it's this two-way street
Mm-hmm.
sort of. And
Mm-hmm.
I think particularly this dumpster, green is my favorite color on the planet, so that like that speaks to me a lot on this, and I just think that you know honestly, I mean it's like punk. Let's say that. Let's say it's the fuck you for sure that we're all looking for. So I really enjoy this one particularly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the work like uh what I wanted to say about like all of this comparing ourselves to trash. It's either like you're trash and you know it, or you're trash and you don't. And
Right.
I'd much rather be trash and know it
Right.
than to be trash and not.
Hmm.
But this work is like so clearly not trash, right? Like
Yes. Right.
I wouldn't come across this and be like, oh, somebody was throwing that away and they slipped. So it has this.
Just kind of fell out a little bit.
And I'd like for everyone to imagine. I don't have the video up now, but on Madeline's Instagram, there's on the second slide of this image, there is a video of it kind of like waving in the wind, kind of in the environment, which has a really nice play with the wavy, distorted nature of the painted surface as well. But it like clearly isn't trash. So then it also has this strange kind of interplay there.
And
Yeah.
I kind of piggyback on that to ask a question. You use the word distortion, which I personally know more as coming from a music background to be more like harsh, clipping things of nature that make it kind of whatever. Your distortion, certainly at least in this piece, almost seem very soft. Well, which is to say, obviously, distortion can be soft. It can it can add kind of a phase, a liquid kind of to that. I guess, but to use your word distortion, I guess how did it come to you that distortion should go in this particular manner? That distorting the image would be, at least from my visual, kind of a bit more fluid, less and less harsh necessarily.
Yeah, so back in 2018, I found out I was pregnant again. And at the time, well, actually, before I found out I was pregnant, I started like having these like what I would describe now as panic attacks, but they were like very lengthy panic attacks, almost like 100% of the time for several months.
Mm.
And I quickly, well, not quickly, but after some therapy, realized that I was suffering from this disorder called depersonalization disorder. And it basically makes you feel like you're living in a dream, but like a bad dream. Like, um, you've basically, like, if you like look at your house and it's a room you've sat in hundreds of times every day, it's basically like if you suddenly looked at that room and it felt unfamiliar to you.
Mm.
That's what the world feels like when you have the realization. Um, and so through my like self-portraiture, at least, I started diving into this idea that like how can I represent like what the world feels like to me in this like very terrible feeling. And so I started it like doing it with self-portraiture because I would look at myself in the mirror and I would straight up just like not recognize myself. And so I thought like how can I represent myself in a way that's not me? And I started like distorting. I started taking these reference images into the Mylar, which is what I paint on. And I really loved how it distorted my figure, how it distorted the room around me. I just felt that it was like a really great visualization of what I see, because I hadn't been able to express that prior. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because I think that, again, that like the average, concept of what a distortion would be, I think people would almost think of things like TV static or something, but like, which could, people might tend to think is very choppy and stuff, but much like TV static, I think too, is like, it can also be very soft, like the kind of warp of that. I think I just think a lot of people's work, they tend to just like tell you exactly how they feel. And this definitely, I need to back up for 2 seconds here. I've never been in a crit before. I did not go to art school. I am not qualified to be on this show whatsoever. Rick, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just kidding. But I just like, I want to say, like, I'm not in any way trying to have an opinion like that of someone who was trained. So if anyone's like looking at me, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. But I think I have a good instinct. But anyway, I think that is definitely seen here in this, and that's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you see that, and I don't think that you need any sort of qualification to view art. And to
oh, please, God, thank you for saying so.
I think that just you being a human with eyes makes you qualified, and you can process work in any way that you feel you see it. And so any opinion you have about my work is valid, and so I like to hear it.
Yeah, and I mean these works exist in public spaces too. So first of all, Jake, like, obviously here for a reason, bring good conversation. But we're having this conversation about this work that exists in a public space that people may come into contact with whom aren't familiar with what's going on or familiar with this type of art making, which I think is really speaks to the vulnerability of sharing this work with the community, is that like these are things that are really important to you, and that are indicating these periods of your life that are impacted by trauma, impacted by dysphoria, impacted by these very intimate feelings or experiences that you're having. But then making them and sharing them with the world is also like a very, very vulnerable act, even, and especially in these public spaces.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that it's I don't know. I like the idea of public art, and because I think that it makes it accessible for everyone. And I don't know. I think that in the future, I would love to have just solely like an outdoor exhibition, like not even built up. Like I would just love to just like pick a parking lot and just put my work there.
Absolutely. Well, just on that subject, just briefly, because it's something I've certainly thought a lot about since COVID. Is that an idea that you've kind of been more into since that time, or is that kind of been with you for a while, kind of wanting to just do almost some sort of guerrilla style, just outdoor exhibition?
It's been with me for a little bit, but it's definitely, COVID has definitely like amplified that feeling, just safer and really like I'm realizing while galleries can be amazing and are amazing at times, that it's limiting. And like I don't know, I don't think that to be an artist your work has to be in a gallery. I think that your work can be anywhere and you're still an artist. And so I just kind of want to lean into that a little bit more, especially if I'm going to be like working more towards three-dimensionally, which I am feeling that pull. I think that outdoor would be a great place to show that work.
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's check out some other images that you've shared with us here of some of the other paintings that you're working on, and then we can get into some of the 3D stuff, because I'm also really interested in how you're shifting from these painted spaces to these 3D spaces. Oh, and one other thing that I thought was interesting is you started this series as kind of like a reference to the feedback that there was too much nudity in your work, and then also like this painting in particular, as well as this painting, is like not nudity, and then
Mhm.
at some point we switch over into this kind of work that then like does become considered nudity. But what jumps
Mhm.
out really clearly for me is that the other images seem much more uh, I don't know, they just have more of like a nudity sense to them, or a different kind of like sexuality to them than this painting does, which I think is
Mhm.
interesting space that you play around with.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that it's the poses. Like, um, this one is obviously more nude. You can see breasts and nipples and every like. I think what makes them stand apart though is that like the poses seem a bit more sexual in the other ones,
Hmm.
or a bit more like flaunting, if you will. And this one, it's almost makes you sad to look at because
Mm.
there's no emotion happening aside from the tears that you see coming out of her eyes. And it's just a blank stare off into the distance.
Mm.
No pose, no nothing. So I think that it just makes you question like what exactly is going on in this piece, at least, in my opinion. Um,
Well, sorry,
no, go ahead.
well, just I'm curious about that idea of how do you tend to, because obviously body language is communication, is emotion, and that you know with body, like this idea that like how does this person feel about me as I'm talking to them, like, well, like where are their knees pointed, something like that, that like that there is language in silence at the same time. So
Mhm.
how is that something that you kind of decide to balance the physical with the emotional in terms of like the communication of the figure within a lot of your work?
Yeah, so this piece in particular is of my sister. It's not a self-portrait, and the second one that's it's called like it has the mad tattooed on the butt. That one is also a portrait of my best friend. Um, and these two pieces I painted because they both of them were like um, the two individuals that I sought the most like solace in when I was going through like my hardest times, like
Mm.
through my whole life, honestly. Like they have been by me through thick and thin. And so both of these images I painted because I sort of wanted to make a shrine to them, if you will. And I also wanted to still exemplify like my own mental illness, if that makes sense, with them. So both of these paintings were made. The reference imagery was pulled from experiences I shared with both of them, and I sort of tried to like visually represent sort of our relationships in a way, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Absolutely.
So while still like trying to stay focused in on myself. Um, so I play with body language a lot because I think that obviously body language says so much, just like you said. And I think that it can really just like change the perception of exactly what you're trying to get across. Um, some at times like these pieces have been more playful, and at times these pieces are like can be really sad, and
Yeah.
it solely just depends on how I'm feeling like in that particular moment when I'm painting it.
Mm.
Um, but they all ultimately relate back to the same idea, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And this is just a little quick follow up of this is like, are these particular pieces, like this one and the tears with the cowboy hat, are the body language of the pieces themselves, like where they are physically placed? Were these shown in exhibition, or are these more just like currently like in your private studio for now, or do they plan to be exhibitioned at some point? I don't know if that's a word, but anyway, the physical communication of the entire piece itself outside of
Mhm.
itself. I'm curious where these have landed.
Yeah, I've actually shown these here in Kansas City in July.
Okay.
And I feel like I had really great response to them. But honestly, I feel like my work is best, like it just does not come across online. Like it just does not, because I paint on a metallic surface. And so like the work literally interacts with the space around it. I leave like little pockets of the metallic mylar like showing through so that it literally changes color based on the space it's in. So I feel like personally for individuals to get like the best experience with my work and with the poses and with just like the general feeling of the work, you actually have to interact with it physically.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's kind of like a similar coloration. Like if you go on to Madeline's Instagram, and I'll pop those links in the chat there. But there's like a similar coloration that I think comes from the material that you're painting on. Like there is kind of this like silvery metallic kind of color that continues to come up, and I mean I just really would love to see these in person. I think that would help.
It really is a way different experience, and that's why Rick, you and I talking about like streaming process videos and things like that. I feel like would be really amazing with my work, especially because I paint on such a weird surface, and seeing how I interact with it outside of just like seeing a finished piece would be really interesting. I think it would add to the viewership, if that makes sense.
You were talking about how process is really kind of an important aspect of your work, and we do want to tease that maybe at some point Madeline's interested in doing live streaming stuff too. So we'll definitely let you all know if we see Madeline doing live stream stuff, because your process is, you said to me numerous occasions, is really important, or something that you really want to find ways to showcase.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like from like conceptualizing an idea to actually like having a finished product, it goes through like multiple steps, and I think that it would just be really cool to be able to show that process to anyone who's interested. I did like a little poll on my Instagram the other day, and I was like, what are you most interested in seeing from creatives? Like, what do you want your favorite artist to show you? And pretty much like almost everyone was just like process. I'm most interested in process. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because in my head, I'm like, people just want to see the finished product. They just want to see like a cool piece of art and be like, hell yeah, like, and then move on. But apparently it's not that. And individuals are more interested in how I get to the finished product, or how everyone gets to the finished product.
Yeah, and that's like a position that we take here at the travel agency, is that being able to create communities around the process side of art making, I think is really important, because so much of what contemporary artists do is process. Like so much of it is process, and so much of it is process oriented, and you sometimes can get a sense of that seeing the finished product, but I don't know, I have a sensation, at least in my work, that the direction of my work is moving away from product and moving more into process, or being able to, instead of just sharing the process more and more, instead of just being able to share the product more and more, just finding ways to share that process with people.
I think so too. Yeah, I think that we talked on a previous episode, I guess. But like, I think that like Instagram, despite it being kind of rinsed in a lot of ways, and people feeling like it sucks and is maybe a root of all evil in the art world sometimes, but I feel like stories themselves are almost predestined to be the work in progress space. Is that if you can kind of execute those two spaces, but at the same time, why not have that? Your posts could be your work in progress, and I think that access is like the biggest possible plus that can come from something like social media, to be that, someone who's just like, oh, Madeline's work's great. I don't know anything about how she does it, what she does, all these things, but like, oh, but that's how, at some point it's just like, or like, if it was on Twitch or streaming or whatever, that's just like, I got to watch it for like 3 hours, I got to watch it for a while. I got to watch, a cat walk by and like, like have these moments of like, artists are people too. You know what I mean? And that like
Yeah.
what they do is not magic in a cauldron behind a giant veil. It's often in a basement with spilled coffee on paper. What you know what I mean? Just like it's very normal, which maybe kind of sucks that it's so normal. But anyway.
And that also gets to like what you were talking about earlier, Madeline, of being able to like really express where this work is coming from or the experiences. Like those aren't something that you can distill very easily to wall text. But being able to, be here, we're even realizing that like 3 hours isn't enough time to really like get to know you and understand how the work is coming from you, which seems strange and like I mean it's incredible. It's like, oh, okay, even after 3 hours of spending time with you, there's still like so many questions and so many things to know. So I think that's also kind of the urge that certain like highly engaged viewers of your work may be looking for, is like more. I need more, Madeline. I need more to understand because I like it so much, but these products, just like the evidence of the work isn't entirely what I'm interested in.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that like moving into like a streaming or like just like a video platform
Mm-hmm.
would be an exceptional way to show that process. I mean, I feel like we learn the most, from watching. I don't know, I'm a visual learner. Maybe you guys are visual learners as well. And like a photograph can only get you so far. And so I have not delved much into like video work, but I can feel myself like I can feel a pull in that direction.
Yeah.
Just because I think that it's, especially like in this day and age, it's so crucial to getting to know individuals and their work and just getting to know anything. And to be honest, like if we want to know how to do something, we watch a YouTube video. Like, I don't know, like I kind of just like I kind of want to make that a part of the process, is like the creation of the video of the process for the finished product. And like you said, Jake, maybe the finished product, like, I don't know, you get caught up in that. Like maybe there doesn't even ever have to be a finished product. It's just,
sure. Well,
it's just you working.
Right. But I also think that like, you don't want to necessarily get too mired in that to where you can't ever be like, oh my God, I just need to get rid of this in front of me. But I think the idea of like art, kind of talking about streaming too, I think that artists that do feel comfortable enough to show their process, at least I'm personally, I would think kind of owe it to their audience, that like, that if you feel comfortable enough to share your process, that like what you're able to give to the world, like I almost feel like that's like a superpower. Like my superpower, like that if you could feel like comfortable being that vulnerable and just being like, let's have a chat, and here's what I do, and it's here's some music I have on in the background, maybe some Devil Wears Prada, whatever. I know that's what Rick does, so it makes sense. But I feel like in a way like you owe it not just to the world but to yourself to see that through, because it's a gift. I think what artists give when they show their process like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and Rick has been helping me like figure out ways that it like what it could potentially look like. So I think that's exciting. I don't know, that's an exciting prospect because I get really like hung up in the like conceptualizing of like how do I make this, how do I like show everyone the process and like it's still work. I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a mess. So
it's a beautiful mess.
Yeah, I mean, I hope, I don't want to tease too much, but hopefully we'll find ways to continue to work together and help you share your work in the future on the travel agency. Because like that's really what it's all about is figuring out the best ways to have the technology and the social media channels reflect you. That's the hardest thing to kind of come to, is like what does someone else's Instagram look like how are they sharing their work and how are they using stories, but like how do I do it, because there still is like so much room. And that's not even getting into how people are starting to do this on Twitch, because like first of all, not many people are even doing it yet. Like the
Mm-hmm.
amount of people out here making creative work versus how many people stream their creative process live. I mean, it's a very small percentage. So being able to find ways to access like the way you want to share these things or the things that are valuable to share about your process, I think helps us even further clarify ourselves. I do want to say hi to Chris in the chat. Good to see you here. We're in our third segment. We looked at some of the work, but we're going to be talking about that. And we're also here with Madeline talking about process and all of the various different ways we as artists interact and interface with the world, which is what it really is. It's a method of interfacing, and there's so much flexibility in that, which I think is really exciting. There's still so many options and ways that we can start to interface with these different versions of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of overwhelming at times.
No.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Rick, just you said, like, it's a beautiful mess, that it's just like, it's too maximal in a way, even though Instagram, I think, is very minimal.
Yeah.
And my quick little side bit is I do think maximal internet is on its way back, because I think we need more space as artists, that we can't just shove everything into a little, square or rectangle
Right.
on Instagram. But I think that, there are no rules. There's no rules. And if they say there's rules, then they're wrong. That's just, that's the rule. So,
yeah. So funny thing, I've been thinking about this a lot. And Chris, no worries that you're late. We like to express to people that they can come and go as they please. This conversation works if you're just showing up now, or if you took a break, or if you have it on in the background. Any way that y'all want to be here and participate, we appreciate. Something I've been doing on Instagram recently is just like shoving as much information into images as I can. It's like you take a look at the travel agency's feed, and a couple of posts have been a bit more minimal recently, but I was just like, let's amp it up. Let's just like start shoving as much information as possible into this little square, because like, first of all, that's a way to create a vibe, but it's like, it's so lacking. It's so lacking. I think we're entering back into the time where, like, we have all of these different spaces. Like the travel agency has like 6 different ways to connect with it. And it's like, how do we start to organize these as artists or as organizations in a way that makes sense? Instagram isn't enough anymore for artists.
For sure. Well, and Madeline, I'll say I noticed that in your links to share, one of them is your TikTok account.
Oh yeah.
And I can kind of play that character on the TV where it's like, wait, who are you? Tell me about that. And but I genuinely have not seen your TikTok yet, which I apologize. But can you tell us a little bit about what TikTok has done for you in terms of process or your art?
Yeah. So honestly, like, not much yet, but
okay.
I think that it's fun. It's helping me like bridge the gap between like photography and painting, and like moving into more of like video editing, I guess, if you will, because you only have 60 seconds to like portray some idea that you're trying to get across. And so it's worked in some ways. Like I made this like one time-lapse video of me painting on a mirror, and that like blew up, but nothing I've made ever since has done anything, which is fine. I'm fine with that, because I'm just experimenting on TikTok. But I have seen like, I don't know if you watch TikToks at all, but like there are people who make like one video and then all of a sudden they have like 1 million followers and their lives have changed. So it's like, I don't know, like, should you just keep making and trying, and like maybe you'll get 1 million followers, and then before you know it, your life has changed, or it maybe will never happen. But the idea that like, if you can make like 2 60-second videos and suddenly you have access to the creator fund, like, I don't know, that sounds exciting to me.
I'm terrified by the prospect of having 1 million followers on TikTok. Like, if somebody did that to me, I would be they're like, hey, we got you a gift, like, Merry Christmas, here's now all of this responsibility, like, good luck. Like, but
I know, this one video that I made, it gave me like 2,500 followers, and that's not that
Whoa,
many. But in
yeah.
my head, I'm like,
It's a
oh
lot.
God, like, do I need to keep making? But I don't. There's no pressure to keep making. But
That's good.
I don't know, like the fact that like one video can just catapult you somewhere, that blows my mind.
Well, and I think that TikTok in that way doesn't have the same algorithmic familiarity that we have with other apps. Like if you have one image on Instagram, I don't care who you know, that's not going anywhere. You know, like that's like it could even be the main, like a new account of someone. Like it's still only going to get probably a fourth. If Kanye West started a new account and he even plugged it, it's still going to get like not even remotely what it could if he kept using it. And I think TikTok's interesting in that way because I think it's one of the few apps that has done the thing where like you see a thing and now it's going to keep showing you that. So like for instance, for me, frog TikTok is all over the place because I love watching frog TikTok videos, and I have to. There's a frog named Mango that passed away very recently, and I got very, very emotionally distraught when he passed. And I shared that on Instagram. And a few caring loved ones reached out to me. But so R.I.P. Mango. But anyway, is that like I do think the space that TikTok has, especially for art, I think is just beginning. And it seems like you're already ahead of the curve with a lot of people, and I think that's super cool.
Yeah. Nikono in chat says, I'm 100% here for the million TikTok followers. And also says, people are flooding to TikTok, but nobody is posting. So discoverability if you post is crazy high, even if your content is shit, like mine.
True. That part I don't know if it's true. I said true just before. Okay,
no. I wish we all had like a simultaneous filter that would like turn us all into old people, like an old people filter face that we could put on as an overlay for this conversation right now.
As we talk about TikTok and the Gen Z kids. Well, Madeline, will you feel any need to do any little dances like while you kind of paint your stuff? Like I hope that are you interested in doing it?
Absolutely not. Like I am not.
Okay.
You had a dancing TikTok. Well, no, you weren't dancing. That was the thing. Is you were explicitly not dancing.
There.
So
hey, the lack of dance is still dance, I suppose. But
well, everyone around me was dancing, and I just stood there. It was
See, that's what you can do when you're the center of attention. When you're the artist.
Yes.
Siggy says all she does is beg me to dance. To the WAP dance, yeah.
Yes.
Oh yes, I do beg him to do that.
So you have a team.
Just because I think it's fun to watch other people dance in real life. But I honestly do not care much for the dancing TikToks. Like I don't.
They're a strange space. I completely agree.
I think we need a influencer house in Malibu with like 12 visual artists, and we all have to post a TikTok daily, and we're all constantly making work and in this like concrete brutalist studio.
Yes.
And we just need like I don't know, like $10 million in funding from the Warhol Foundation, and we could just have like a visual artist influencer house in Malibu with a huge studio and like a printing press and stuff, and that's like all we need to become TikTok legends.
Let's do it. Who do we call?
That's it. $10 million a house.
Warhol.
Easy.
We just call the Warhol Foundation. I'll submit the grant later today.
Well,
I mean, what would be more
Foundation
Warhol than that?
TikTok? Yeah.
I mean, that would be like the most Warhol Foundation thing ever. Is like TikTok would not. I mean, Instagram wouldn't exist without Andy Warhol for sure.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But I mean, we could even start wondering if TikTok would.
Wow. Well, that's certainly what we're here to discuss, obviously.
But yeah, go follow her. Go follow all of us. We're over there trying to figure it out. I mean, I posted a video and it got like 1,200 views, and I'm like, am I famous? What happened? But I think everybody's first video gets like over 1,000 views, which is so strange.
Yeah.
I know. Now I'm like, how do you even get 10 likes? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, right. You get a little taste of the glory, and then
just
they drop you.
Just chasing the glory.
Wow.
Well, let's switch gears over to some of the. I think we also wanted to talk about some of the three-dimensional work that you're doing, and you've recently like made. I don't know if it's a shift, if it's completely new for you, but you're also thinking about 3D work now.
I am. So it's been like in the last I guess like 2 years probably that I have been shifting into like making some more three-dimensional work. I was asked to work with the Springfield Art Museum on an event they had in 2018, 2009. When was that? 2019, I think. Yes. And I really wanted to like make some just like three-dimensional like environmental work that kind of just was like in the background, and it wasn't like the focal point of anything. It just kind of like brought together like other artists' work, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I started like working three-dimensionally and making these like just like abstract shapes, and then I don't know, it like led into more three-dimensional work, and mainly it's been like fun. It's been just like practice, like experimental for like maybe potential larger work. Because again, I was working in my tiny studio apartment, and so I'm excited to see like what I can do with an actual like studio workshop space, and like with just more space to build bigger things. I don't know. I feel a huge pull towards designing like furniture. That also, that is also art, which I mean, most would argue furniture is art.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like, I guess just like, I love working with my hands, and painting is that, but building something is like just a different, like, visceral experience.
Yeah, I have a friend who just started an OnlyFans that highlights all of her Herman Miller chairs in her house.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
So I think furniture is definitely art. I mean, there's like you know, this form and function is at like such a more important or such a different proportion from a painting, like form and function of like 3D goods. And I know, Jake, you were mentioning last week that you're really interested in like sculpture as a method of expression, because it carries with it all of these different proportions of intentionality than some of the other stuff that we engage in.
Well, I'm curious, Madeline. So the piece that you said that it kind of, I guess it brought a work together, like a group show, was that? I guess
yeah,
how did...
it was for an event at the Springfield Art Museum. It was like a fundraising event, and they bring together like several local artists to make work based around a theme, if you will.
Okay.
And that year they asked a couple of artists to be environmental artists, and so the work we made had to like tie the room together. And so working three-dimensionally, I don't know, it just like ignited something different in my brain, because I never had done that before. And I was like, oh, I want to keep doing that. I want to feel that more. And
Absolutely.
So yeah, I don't know. And then with this last exhibition I had, I wanted to tie in some three-dimensional pieces with the painting. So like every three-dimensional sculpture that I made was drawn from one of the paintings that I made, if that makes sense. So they like sat in front of each painting that it was drawn from, and kind of like brought it into a three-dimensional space.
Wow. And I guess this is still process, still of a question, but like, I guess breaking out of the mold, if you will, from painting to three-dimensional, do you feel like that will then, or has retroactively affected back to non-3D work that you're working on? Like as far as exploring those spaces and what that you can bring back to from whence you came?
I actually do, because now that I've done some three-dimensional, like some sculptural work, I feel like my the material that I want to work with painting wise is I want it to be different. Like I really love painting on the Mylar, but I am limited by it in some ways, and so I want to see how I can expand outside of the Mylar, maybe keep using the Mylar, but I want to see how I can expand on that a little bit more, because I don't ever, like, painting is so therapeutic and like meditative for me. I don't ever want to stop painting.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's really like meditative to build something.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And maybe a cat castle can be next or something like
Oh,
that.
Perhaps.
the pinnacle of furniture, cat
Yes.
furniture.
I mean, I will say, I'll have to find the account. I can send it to you. There is an Instagram where this person does tufting, but they're also into furniture, so they kind of add the two spaces of like adding the rug kind of tufting material or tufted, work to that, and they make like basically like actually cool cat castles, which I think
Yeah,
is really hard to do.
sounds tough.
And
Tough.
it's and it's something that I've really enjoyed as someone who's kind of curious again in the sculpture form, also tufting, but also like that there's like a natural play to it, that that there is a physical element of I hate to say, but like practicality, like it does something. It is an item to be bought.
Yeah.
Well, and curious of that idea of like furniture, kind of moving to that, like how, like, that at that point you have to think about like function, not just form, because do people sit on your chairs? That's my first question. Is are these to be just on display?
No, they 100% work. They hold two bodies even. I have tested them out.
A love seat.
Yeah, a love seat.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I definitely think that the function is important. I think that even in the future, I might like to like try to like bridge the gap between like painting and furniture design and like just, I don't know, like who knows where it could go. Like the possibilities are endless, but I just know that like I feel like I'm on the cusp of like a different way of expression.
Yeah. Well, and I think that importantly for painters, and we didn't even get into the painter conversation, which I think is a really good conversation of like, what is a painter? Why do we call ourselves painters, or what does painting do? But it's probably a nice like counterpoint to your practice to create things that have function, to create things that have like physical forms. I notice sometimes like when I'm doing too much painting, then I need to like, repair something, or I need to like do something that has like I need to organize something, like organize a shelf. There's something that has like real world implication, that provides me a sense of meaning outside of what the painting can do from time to time. I do also have some viewer questions here from Chris Griffin. First one is, would you rather be an artist and get money for your art but no one see your art, or would you rather have no money but lots and lots of people seeing your work?
That's an interesting question.
I thought so too. Yeah.
I think that I would definitely get no money and have lots of people see my work. I think that we are just ruled by money, and I don't think that it is the reason that anyone should make anything.
Especially art. It's bad luck.
I feel like I see so many individuals just like make something and people are like, I want to buy that. So they just like keep mass producing the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, okay, we get it. Like you can paint this portrait. I get it. But like, come on, like, let's expand a little bit more. And like, it's so easy to do that because you think like, oh, people want to give me money for this, then it must be great. But I think that those two things don't necessarily coincide.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So I think I would rather have like a more extensive viewing than monetary gain.
Cool.
Yeah.
Rick, real quick, do we have a image of the chair that we could show? Because then we were discussing it a little bit. I thought we had it in the.
I don't think I sent it to him.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, on Madeline's Instagram, there is a chair, pretty much at the top, that I would really highly suggest people check out, because I especially just know that like if I was watching this show, I'd be like, I want to see that damn chair. So we can drop the link in the chat or something like that. But if nothing else, go to Madeline's Instagram.
Here.
Oh, you got it. Okay. Rick's the tech master. He's gonna bam, look at that. There it is. So.
That is a love seat.
Yes. And I should mention that I made that with my friend Matt. But the way we designed it was that we wanted it to be like a DIY chair, so like anyone could build this theoretically, and
Yeah.
we built the two separate sides so that you could you could show that it could be customized. So like mine is obviously like the wonky abstract shapes, and his is the more like geometrical slats. And we wanted to show that you could literally make the seat or the back look like whatever you wanted to, as long as you build the base the same way.
I see. I mean, this is great. I think that I don't. It is, yeah, a chair, but then also like thinking about this idea that came up of like the love seat, right? I remember being like so embarrassed to sit on a love seat when I was a child because I was like so embarrassed of the name. I was like, no, I'm a boy of many interests, none of which include love.
Yes.
And
Love is icky. What can I say?
but just thinking of like these two different sets of ideas coming together and being like merged in this way, kind of has that connotation, and I don't know, I just I feel compelled to look at it that way now, of like these are two seats coming together but like making it work. Which I love that. I think that's
Me too.
so
I think
good.
that's well, and so is this piece particularly strictly just that like people would kind of use your designs and then make their own? Is that the idea, or more so just that like, and you can do it too? Like when you say like people can do it too, is there? Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was more like, and you can do it too.
Okay.
Like we never created like a blueprint or anything for it. But the idea was that it was actually for like a design competition that we entered it into, which we did not win, which is fine. But we entered into this design competition, which was specifically like a DIY chair, like make a design that anyone could build.
Wow.
So that's what we came up with. And we wanted it to be customizable because not everyone has the same style.
For sure. Well, and I do love the choice that you made. That I love the idea of like, if this is, let's say, a love seat, that like you can almost kind of decide like, well, which seat are you, or which seat are you today? You know, if you and your seat partner, you know, you can be like, oh, I'm feeling a little, you know, a little wiggly. I don't know. And then maybe someone's like, I feel plain. I want to be.
Chris in the chat says, might as well call it a cootie chair.
I mean, let's be honest. Ew, icky.
No, I love like modular goods, like modular furniture, and I think that you all should have won the design competition, because like being able to just switch out these different panels, or having like, you know, a set of them that come with it, like 6 different designs, and you could just, you know, switch out the bases and the tops and mix and match. Like furniture is not as mixy and matchy as I'd like it to be. You have to like buy a whole new set. You have to spend $1,000 if you want something new, and sometimes that's difficult to do for us non-$1,000 folks.
Well, I have to say, I keep looking at this even deeper and deeper, and I have so many questions. So, and we can move on to another piece too, but we're in the segment called Chair Chat. So we're you know, welcome to Chair Chat, everyone. This is the place where we chat about chairs.
Have a seat.
Yes. So noticeably, like there's very, you know, linear lines being used. However, the functional shape of it is very loose. I guess what brought you to that method?
I guess like we wanted it to be very like adaptable. We wanted it to be like a chair that could be placed in any environment and it would work. Like obviously this chair could be made with different types of wood. You could stain it. I don't know. I think that the shapes that we chose, at least for like the base of the chair, would translate well to almost any interior design space, or at least a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we chose something that was like simple, and then we were like, okay, the back and the seat, you can just like, you can do anything you want. Like it can be as weird as you want. And so I think that was how we started, at least, like something very simple. And when we were brainstorming the idea, we realized we had very differing styles, and so like we had to sort of meet in the middle. Because I kept wanting to do like you can see my side of the chair. I kept wanting to do like weird like organic shapes.
Yeah.
And he was like very linear, like even thought about concrete for a while, and like
Oh wow.
And so like we just had to sort of find something in the middle that we could.
Yeah. Like
Absolutely.
love.
Yeah.
Like love.
Like love itself, yes.
Shout out to Matt Strom on Instagram. You can go click, you can go tap in, if you know what I mean. Tap through. I've been trying to say that more instead of click. It's like no one's clicking anymore. Although I did just get a cool new mouse, but
Ooh, that's a sick mouse.
but yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're gonna have to wrap this up here in the next few minutes, and
Bummer.
we can do it again. It's like I kind of just want, I don't know, every week it's like, oh, we could do this show every week, like the Jake, Rick, Jack show could take place every week. The Jake, Rick, Madeline show could take place every week, and then we just have to keep getting more guests. but I mean, we would
like 20 people.
Yeah,
snowball show,
or just like this is what we do. This is just like full on news channel. It's just art chat with Jake and Rick every day of the week with one of the different cast members.
Yes, exactly.
But I really enjoyed the conversation. I do have to do a service to our guests by asking the lightning round 10 questions of power.